there, everybody. My name is Bernadette Smith. My pronouns are she and her. Welcome to 5 Things in 15 Minutes, my weekly show where I bring good vibes to DEI. That is good vibes to diversity, equity, and inclusion with a little dash of corporate social responsibility. What I found is that there are lots of news stories about what's going wrong in the world and lots of negative data. But there are also a lot of things going right. That's what I like to focus on. I search for DEI stories that we can be inspired by and learn from. My hope is to inspire you to experiment with some of these inclusive actions and policies within your own organization to help you build a more inclusive world. In this week's episode, the conversation, let's back up. In this week's episode, I'm joined by Karmen Smith, author, minister, and queer advocate. This week, our conversation is about the Methodist Church lifting LGBTQ bans, opting out of Mother's Day, the Potawatomi Nation, and more. Let's get started. Karmen, thank you so much and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Will you tell folks a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I am Karmen Michael Smith. I'm an author of a book called Holy Queer, The Coming Out of Christ, which is a treatise and part memoir on inclusivity within the church, which is such a great topic this week.
Yeah.
I'm also an advocate for representation for women and LGBTQ plus in marginalized communities. And I'm also a theologian and minister and work in the DEI space.
I love it. Can you talk a little bit about your book? Tell us a little bit about sort of the thesis behind your book and some of the stories that you share.
So I really lay myself bare to put flesh on the experience of the LGBTQ plus faithful community. We are often a community that is talked about, but that's not the same as being talked to.
Mhm.
So I wanted to do something revolutionary, which was to start a conversation, apparently, because I see a lot of people talking about the Q plus community and saying that we're this and we're this in the church. And I grew up in the church and I loved church. But it was a space where it's like, yeah, but you're not really included, but you're, or as I say in the book, that you are not necessarily useful, but you can be used. And so you get used a lot for your creativity or the choir or in this ministry. But I wanted to really bring what that experience does to a young boy and also to a grown man and say, I am a part of your community. I am your brother and sister in Christ. And I want to be in community with you. So not necessarily please include me, but I'm here. I am included. And so, yeah, let's have a conversation.
I love that. And actually just hearing you talk about it has made me think of this podcast called Second Sunday,
Mm,
which is on the Cube, which is a queer LGBT queer Black podcasting app or system run by Anna Deshawn Rainey. And that
mm.
podcast is about Black queer people finding, keeping, and sometimes losing faith. So I will make sure I put that in the show notes and share it with you as well. I've listened to a couple of episodes and it's really moving.
Yeah, I would love it.
Yeah, maybe I can hook you up to be a guest on that show as well. There we go. It's all about connections, right?
All about connections.
So Karmen, you do DEI professionally in addition to your work as a minister and a queer advocate. Can you talk a little bit about your professional work in the DEI space?
Yes, I would say I stumbled into this work about 3 years ago. And what I tell people all the time, because they were like, wait, you're a minister that was doing nonprofit work, and then you happen into DEI. And I say, for anyone who's ever been at a storefront church, that is DEI.
Mm.
You have many different factions. You have the seniors, you have the young people who want to do this, you have the stalwarts who've like, this is how we've always done it. You have the leader who is the lead, but also isn't the person who has all the influence.
Mm.
And so sometimes you need to go to other people who are not the leaders to get the thing done that you need to get done and to get buy-in. And you've always got those people who are just like, I'm not doing it because we've never done it that way. And we've done this way since I was so this was the ground that the groundwork, the foundation for being able to do this very human work. People think that it's checking boxes and doing surveys and doing a training. DEI is about the inclusion, recognition, and acceptance of everyone in the workplace, in the organization. Because when people don't feel included, they quiet quit, and there's all the data about how that affects the bottom line. So, DEI
Mhm.
really is about a very human. I'm right next to you. We should probably talk. I should probably know what your strengths are so that I can like utilize them in the best way possible. And then you know what I can do. It's very human practice, but people try to make it very difficult. So my job is to bring the participation and the very human element back to the workplace and DEI as a whole.
I love that. I think it's a beautiful mission, and I couldn't agree more. In fact, it's a bit about what I wrote about in this week's 5 Things newsletter. I wrote about what I called the belonging buzzword,
Mm,
and I'm going to do a DEI double feature about it on Wednesday with Michelle Silverthorne. But
mm,
ultimately, we keep hearing this word about this belonging buzzword, and, it's sort of one of the ways that DEI has been rebranded lately. The softer
yes.
side of DEI is belonging, right? Um, but the reality is, I can speak from my experience, and I would love to hear yours as well. There have been very few places in my entire life in which I've felt like I belonged. Um, I,
Absolutely.
I think that part of it is being queer. I think part of it is being an entrepreneur. I think part of it is just how I'm wired. Being the youngest child, whatever. There's like a million reasons, right? So we
Right.
all have our thing. Um, but I just think that there's a wisdom in not having that sense of belonging, right? There are lessons from that I
Oh,
can
yeah.
bring to this work. And I would love to hear a little bit about, kind of the wisdom that you've received from the times that you might not have belonged.
Well, I think one that's what makes um and I'll make a generalization here, but that's what makes queer people so great in these positions. We have not belonged historically to these spaces that we've grown up in, schools, churches, organizations. Like we have not belonged. We've always been the anomaly. And so, um, in the last interview with James Baldwin, the interviewer talks about, and I write about this, that at the intersection for him of being Black, male, and queer, um, can be a redemptive self-awareness, or a redemptive quality, a redemptive knowing of self and awareness of the other that you wouldn't get anywhere else. And
Mm,
it's like, yeah, that's it. Because you're always on the outside. You're always at this crossroads. You're never enough of this, but too much of this in every space, that you are able to open up your heart space to get to find who you are. Therefore, as I say, heal people, then you look at the other with this same sort of like, you're finding your space. And I know what that's like. And so it's easier for me to facilitate a space of belonging, not to make anyone belong, because I think that that's just a really hard thing to do. Like everybody doesn't belong everywhere. I'm not going to be like, oh no, this is just, this heavenly place. And when we all get to heaven, it's going to be great. No. But
no.
what it does is that even in those solitary times, it can teach you, if you allow it, this awareness of self. I know better who I am, not just because I fit into spaces, but a lot of times the spaces I didn't fit into taught me the most. And so I'm able to better navigate myself in the world. I'm able to better navigate talking to people who are like, nope, I'm not going to do any of this DEIB stuff.
Hmm.
I'm able to better understand that because I also know that I don't fit in every place and never have.
Yeah, I feel myself getting goosebumps hearing you speak, and I can tell
Mm.
why you're a minister.
Yeah.
But I'll just say that I think that I think that there's wisdom in our wounds, right? And
Yes.
a lot of wisdom in our wounds, and I think that there's gifts that we can then give to help others heal as well. And I can say, at least from my own experiences, that being on the outside for so much of my life has given me too much time to think, which is like an awful lot of self-awareness, right? I chose to seize that
Mhm.
to turn that into lots of
Yes.
self-awareness.
And it helps with writing the book because people are always like, "Oh, you wrote a book." I'm like, "It's a very solitary experience. I don't know about what you think that it is, like, but it's very solitary." But I had years of spending time by myself and with myself. And so the thinking and the cultivation of the perspectives I have even on the religious texts are people like, you have these different takes on what the scriptures are saying. I've had a lot of time to think.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. Well, on that note, let's get into this week's good vibes. The first story this week comes from the Biden administration, which has expanded Title IX rules effective August 1st to protect LGBTQ plus students and overhaul responses to sexual assault. So, definitions of sexual harassment have been broadened, protections have been extended to pregnant, gay, and transgender students, and has addressed long-standing inequities. And it could be a violation of these rules if there is consistent misgendering. So, very, very interesting to see what happens here, Carmen. I do love this.
Yes, I do. I worked in a higher education space. And again, storefront church. There are people who like, I get it. There are people who like, I don't get it, but maybe you can explain it to me and I'll try to get it. And then there are the people who are like, I will not.
Yeah.
And so this is the space in which I say DEI is very human.
Yeah.
Pronouns are about making people feel seen, acknowledged, heard.
Yep.
We all have that. There's not a single human being in the world, even if people say, I don't care what people think about me. And 100% of the time, all the time, no. Every human being wants to be validated. And
Yeah.
if what it takes for someone to be validated is for you to call them by their name, by the name they've chosen, by the pronoun they've chosen, then do it.
Yeah.
That just isn't that hard. And so I think that this is great because institutions, as we
Yeah.
see, have been very on the fence of, yeah, we're doing this work, but we don't want to make anyone feel uncomfortable. And this administration basically says, this is who we are as a nation.
That's right.
And I
That's
believe
right.
that.
I love that. I think that's a really beautiful way to sum it up. Okay, the second story this week comes from here in Illinois, where I live, where the prairie band Potawatomi Nation has reclaimed a portion of its ancestral land after 175 years. So it's the state's first federally recognized tribal land. Now, this decision came from the U.S. Department of the Interior, which grants sovereignty over portions of this land to the tribe, acknowledging the injustice of the U.S. government illegally auctioning off almost 1,300 acres of land 175 years ago. A little bit of justice.
We have to take justice where we can get it.
Yeah.
But I believe that this is a beautiful story because for people who do justice work, people will be like, "Oh, this is why even 175 years ago, or this no one's alive even from that time." But I'm like, there is a system at play here um, that I don't think that we often acknowledge,
Mhm.
and to be wronged. People complain that it's been so long. I would often say to people, "Tell me about that person in elementary school who did that thing to you." And they can automatically tell you what the thing was because mine was Melissa Neal told me she couldn't be my girlfriend in the 3rd grade because I was too fat. So I remembered that to this day.
Mhm.
But we remember things from 20, 40, 50 years ago, and they still wound us. So if there can be any justice, any sort of healing that can take place, I'm all for it.
Yep, absolutely. And Arthur wouldn't move on the bus, so I couldn't share his seat. And I bit him, so apparently I wounded him too. That was kindergarten.
But we remember.
We remember.
Yeah.
Yes, we sure do. All right. The third story this week comes from the John Lewis Partnership, the UK's largest employee owned business with 83,000 partners. It's publishing its interview questions online, even for executive positions. And this aims to alleviate job seekers' anxiety and to ensure fair assessments, to increase diversity, reduce biases. I love it. It gives people a fair shot.
Absolutely. As I say, inclusivity is key, whether it's in the church, whether it's in the workplace. Not everyone is rapid fire.
Hmm.
Not every job requires that. And even when I'm giving talks or trainings, I like to give extra space. And actually, one of my other alums from Union told me this, Naomi Jewel. She was like, you have to give introverts time.
Hmm.
You have to leave enough space and be comfortable with, are there any questions, and letting there be space so that the introverts can think about what they're saying and then decide to say. It can't just be rapid fire all the time. And so I think anything that is more inclusive, that allows everyone to participate. And don't you want to hire for the job? So what's the gotcha? Like, I'm going to, get this question and now I got you. Give people time to prepare so that they can properly answer you.
Exactly. And also, like, this is something every single company can do. Every single organization can do this. So if you're ever listening to this show or reading Five Things and you're like, yeah, our company would never do that. This is like so easy to do. So take
And it
this
saves
as
you.
exactly,
If
exactly.
you are the person hiring, I've sat on those panels, and sometimes those answers go on forever because they're trying to make it up in their head. And this doesn't give anyone an advantage, I promise you, because the people who are going to answer in ways that are not so I don't know the word I'm thinking of, but people who are going to answer in an off-color way are still going to answer in an off-color way, I promise you. So no one's
Absolutely.
getting an advantage.
Absolutely. All right. The fourth story this week comes from the United Methodist Church, which voted to lift bans on LGBTQ plus clergy and same sex weddings. So this is a pretty big deal because the church has been divided in recent years. Lots of contentious debates, and there are actually some regions in the world that can opt out of these rules. So I guess it's sort of a split victory, but have to celebrate this. This is really huge.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the thing about LGBTQ and the faith is my wheelhouse. It's what I talk about and workshop and all of that. And it is a really personal thing for a lot of people. And there's so many things from like, okay, well, I grew up and Mima and Papa said that this is what it was supposed to be. And who wants to go against them and say that they were wrong? But this is also what I've known and what I've held on to. But it's also excluding your brother and sister in Christ or the person you're going to church with. So anything that brings more people together. I'm not going to say it has to be this denomination or this thing, but if it's
Mhm.
bringing people together, I'm all for it. I celebrate it. Ring the bell. It's a win, win, win.
That's right. It's such a huge win. And I have a very good friend from college who is a Methodist minister, and she's going to join the show in the next, I don't know, sometime soon to talk about this as well. It's such a huge victory.
Yes.
All right. And the last story this week comes from Butcher Box, which is just one of an increasing number of companies offering folks on its mailing list the ability to opt out of Mother's Day promotions because it can be a very emotional time of year for folks, day of the year for folks. I know it is for me. And so it allows folks to not get those kinds of promotional emails. And I lost my mom. I have a lot of grief around that day. A lot of many conflicted feelings. So I love this. This is an option.
This actually touched me when I saw it. I wanted to weep a little bit because I
Mhm.
thought, yes, we hold mothers in such high regard here in this country, and mothers deserve all of the accolades and day and celebration and stuff that they get, but not every mom is your mom, and not
Mhm.
everyone's mom is here. And I don't it's not to take away from you, which is what some people are like, well, it takes away from Mother's Day. No, your children can
Oh,
celebrate you, you can celebrate your mom, but it also includes those whose me and my sister were talking about this weekend. What if your mom was a drug addict when
yeah.
you were growing up? You don't read these cards at the store and go, you were the best mom ever, and you were. And so this actually includes everyone's experience. And so people can celebrate in different ways or not. And I think that that is the thing, is that we're looking more communal instead of individual.
Which isn't that the goal of existence?
Isn't that the goal?
I gotta remind myself of that every single day.
Yeah. I mean, but it helps us get to a point where if we are seeing and validating other people, they also feel empowered to see and validate other people. And that is the beloved community that Dr. Martin Luther King talked about. So I think the more inclusion, the more validation we can do to people, even if it's just smiling at someone on the street, like, let's just do it.
I love it, Carmen. What a gentle soul you are. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining me today. How can folks get in touch with you?
You can find me on my Instagram at Karmenstagram, 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 stole that from Prince. Um, and my website, KarmenMichael.com, Carmen with a K.
Awesome. We'll make sure that goes in the show notes. Thank you. This week's call to action is also about belonging. My friend Rhodes Perry, who wrote the book Imagine Belonging, is hosting the Belonging Circle, a gathering for inclusive leaders, visionaries, and changemakers on June 6th. You can learn more and register at the link I posted, and you can make sure that will go in the show notes as well. Folks, if you don't already get the 5 Things newsletter, you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. Thank you so much, Carmen. It has been an absolute pleasure. Have a great week.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Take care.
Bye.